Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel if you're watching on YouTube, and welcome back to the Witch Church podcast if you're listening. It's Mal, and I am here with a little top of the year 2026 forecast. I'm super excited for the kind of opening transit, I would say, of 2026, which is Venus rebirthing herself through the sun in what we call a Cazimi. This is when a planet gets super, super close to the sun in the same degree of the sun and has a little bit of like a phoenix rebirth moment. So we're going to talk about what that might mean for Venus. It's also important to note that this transit doesn't happen in isolation. No transits do. And there's quite a big Venus conjunction with Mars the next day. And then Mars will also have his own rebirth moment through the sun later in the week. So this week of January 6th is important to prepare ourselves for. Again, I'm going to be focusing mainly on the Venus part, but know that there's some other parts brewing in the background, and this will be coming out, this episode / video is coming out on January 1st, and that's because I think we should take some time to prepare. The Venus Cazimi will actually happen on January 6th, and keep in mind this whole entire time Venus has been in Capricorn. She is actually combust, which means she's getting burnt up under the rays of the sun. So if some Venusian themes in your life are feeling a little bit iffy, it's probably because Venus is under the beams. This is actually an ancient term that the Hellenistic astrologers used to describe when the planet was perhaps sort of burnt up by the sun's rays, and thus the power of the planet is a bit diluted, or the planet itself has a little bit more trouble manifesting like the best possible scenario for itself. So when Venus is having a little bit of a struggle working up to this beautiful rebirth moment on January 6th, we might be feeling more of those shadow Venus manifestations, like maybe disharmony with our relationships, maybe incompatibility with the way we communicate with someone else. Maybe we're having trouble finding that harmony, that grace, that empathy that we usually can find for a certain person or a certain group of people. We could be feeling a little bit uncomfortable as well with our money stories. And certainly this year has been financially difficult for a lot of people. So I'm thinking that the money signification of Venus is really present leading up to January 6th. We might be kind of feeling like I need to have this rebirth with my relationship to my finances. Maybe there's a new plan needed in some way. And then lastly, Venus is also, I find Venus often is about forgiveness and compromise as well. So we might be also dialing in and doing a little soul searching with how we may want to compromise in a certain situation that isn't necessarily our most ideal, circumstance. I think those are some themes that could be coming up right now. And we'll talk more for each individual rising sign, I think, what this rebirth could be bringing up. First, I want to share my screen here for January 6th, we can see that Venus will rebirth at the 16th degree of Capricorn. So if you have anything that is especially in that middle of the degrees of the cardinal signs, so, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 of Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, and Libra, I think this Venus Cazimi is a particularly important moment for this year to set intentions, especially with some of those other things I just mentioned, with some themes that could be coming up around this time. Again, once we go into the horoscopes, I'll give you some, better ideas of how it might be hitting your house. Now, keep in mind, just a day after Venus rebirths through the conjunction with the sun, Mars will also, or Venus will also run into Mars, which happens at 17 degrees of Capricorn on January 7th. And then just a few days later, by January 9th, the sun has now overcome Mars in a conjunction as well. So between these three conjunctions, like such a powerful week, January 6th, January 7th, and then to January 9th, we have these really almost phoenix-coded conjunctions happening in the house of Capricorn. I think Capricorn oftentimes brings up themes about the bigger picture of our lives and perhaps the long-term story of maybe what we're building or what we want to see manifest in the future. Capricorn isn't a type of sign that is just living for today. Capricorn's its nature is a little bit more to think like 5 to 10 years out. So when we're talking about maybe goal setting or new seeds that you might be planting for yourself, I'm getting that this goal doesn't necessarily happen even this year, but certainly there's some kind of really important planting of the seed that I think is happening this year. So keep in mind some of the goals that you might be downloading from source, guides, ancestors, whatever. These are like 5 to 10 year goals. Like these aren't necessarily something you're trying to do in a month. However, Capricorn also is about the wisdom of actually how to meet a goal 5 to 10 years out. So really powerful time to have those discussions with your higher self, if you will, and kind of consider where your future self is at and connecting with them, and then also discussing where you need to be now in order to meet that future self, right? So it's a really beautiful moment. And again, even though it's super activated this second week of January, this is a seed that's being planted for a long time. And it will be working, I think, in the background of all of our lives throughout the next couple of years. Keep in mind, we actually have 2 Venus Cazimi or Venus star points in 2026. Again, we've discussed the first one happens on January 6th. Now, forgive me, because I have to remember, I know the second one happens in October, and I know it happens at 0 degrees Scorpio, but I don't know the date. So let's see here. We're going to fast forward a little bit to, actually, it definitely happened 0 degrees Scorpio. Let's see. There it is, October 23rd, 2026. So keep in mind too, Venus will actually plant two very important seeds this year, one in our Capricorn house and one in our Scorpio house later. So let's focus on the Capricorn house though. And at this point, I want to do a little rising sign forecast. And again, my sort of, as cheesy as it is, my inspiration for January 6th is the Phoenix. And I'm just reading these as, the Venus Cazimi being this really beautiful point of rebirth that's going on for you in this Capricorn place. And and I hope that this video can help you find some good intentions with maybe what you want to put on that vision board, or what you might want to manifest, this year or in the years to come. I think we'll look back on this month and think, okay, a lot of important things really started around this time. Let's start with the Cancer risings, since I am a Cancer rising and so is the birth chart of the universe. So, we might be the best rising sign, just kidding. But Cancer risings, the Venus Cazimi will happen in the 7th house of relationships and partnerships. So I'm getting there's that Phoenix energy when it comes to our contracts with other people. So a good example of this is I am kind of starting a little side business with a new business partner. And this side business is going to have a lot to do with electional astrology. So, I'm seeing this moment as like this new partnership that's forming in my life in the business realm. At the same time, there could also be, for those Cancer risings who are maybe not partnered or single or whatever, there could be a new kind of zest or a new energy that is coming that has to do with meeting someone important, especially in the realm of romantic partnership. It's possible that this could come after a time of feeling maybe burnt out or just really annoyed or, sick of however dating has been going for you for the past couple years or whatnot. And it's like, all right, this is really representing not only a new way of going about my dating life, but also just like really taking in the lessons that you have learned. Even if those partnerships, those relationships, weren't the one, like you learn so much about who you're wanting to choose and who your partners could be in the future. And I would actually consider, writing down from past relationships what qualities within that person, would you want to see in your next partnership? Like maybe, your ex was a total bozo, but like you guys always really laughed. And that ex taught you how important having someone silly and fun and, someone you could laugh with, like that's what you're taking with you. It's not the person, but it's that quality. And you're making a list of, things that you're really wanting to bring into that next partnership. For the Cancer risings who are partnered, I could see this being actually more of a Phoenix rising moment for your partner. Maybe there's a new job, a new business venture. Maybe your partner is committing to a health journey, some sort of, maybe your partner's getting sober, or, there's some kind of new energy that you're seeing in your partner that is then positively affecting your life. Okay. So those are some things to think about. And I am going to do for each sign, I'm going to do some bibliomancy. And if you don't know what bibliomancy is, it's just, it's kind of using a book as an oracle and asking like what message is meant for the rising sign at this moment. And it's so funny. This book is actually a book of art, and it's called The Library of Esoterica by Jessica Hundley. I'll put it in the show notes, but Cancer Rising, you actually got a piece of art that alludes to Libra. So I'll kind of show you that. Ooh, sorry, I have a new laptop now, and I'm struggling a little bit with the auto zoom, so forgive me, my YouTube watchers. But I think this really shows how important the balancing of the scales, if you will, really are with whatever, if it's the new business partner, maybe it's someone new that you're going to meet at speed dating, maybe it's your current partner, but there is something like a deeper question of like, what energy from another person really balances me, really adds to what I lack, and how do I add to what another person might lack. Like even my new business partner, oh gosh, he is so much more detailed, organized, and he's very good at pushing me forward on things. And for me, I'm a double Pisces. So, I think sometimes the Pisces in me, I like, I don't have this natural sense of urgency. And I kind of just like do things when I feel like it, which actually isn't great when you own a business. So this business partner is really, holding me accountable in a way that's actually really important. And on the flip side, I think I offer him a lot of, okay, let's pause for a second. Is this ego timing? Is this spirit timing? What is it? And all the irony is that our business is about electional astrology, which is all about timing events and, product launches. And, so it's funny that timing is such a thing that we kind of teach each other about. And of course, our Saturns are opposite. So if you know, you know. So that's my tea for Cancer, for the Venus Cazimi. Let's go to our next rising sign, which is Leo Rising. We have this rebirth of Venus happening in the 6th house of the daily schedule, work environment, and also wellness, mind-body connection, I think is very 6th house. If you're stressed out at work and then you get a rash, it's kind of that 6th house effect. And I could actually see this being some Leo risings potentially parting ways with maybe a boss or a manager or some kind of overarching overarching hierarchy in your work life. You might be deciding, I want to work for myself, or I'm craving a more entrepreneurial way of life. I'm looking for a job that provides me with more freedom. I am maybe just overall looking for more balance in my everyday life. And in order to do that, I have to create it. So I think there's something like that going on for the Leo risings. I think out of everybody, the Leo risings could be beginning some kind of new health regimen. Venus tends to relate to how we upkeep ourselves, like our skincare, even our like hair or makeup. You could decide, I want to feel better about myself. I want to make myself feel loved. So I'm really going to invest in my skincare regimen or my vitamins or like something along those lines that helps you feel more stable in your everyday life. It provides a constant throughout some of this other change, I think, that might be going on in your work life. So that's really exciting for the Leo risings. And let's do the bibliomancy for the Leo risings. Okay, so the page I flipped to is actually just the beginning chapter of Neptune. Oh no, here we go with the the Zoom again. Sorry, YouTube. But yeah, this Neptunian force, it also, says things like the natural house is the 12th house, and which isn't true in Hellenistic, but you get me. So symbolizes spirituality, feet, spinal column, nervous system. I think this could definitely be pointing towards the health regimens needing to maybe benefit the health and well-being of your nervous system in some way. It could be very important. Just in general, Neptune often creates some kind of like nebulous effect. And sometimes I think when we're in the very new beginning, planting seed, rebirth of the phoenix energy, we get scared, right? Because we are imagining the worst. And although Neptune can help us imagine the greatest life possible, Neptune can also, twist and get us caught in our deepest fears and anxiety stories. So I think there's a warning here about maybe like not avoiding extremism, because like maybe the wildest, craziest dream is just as unrealistic as your worst nightmare or your worst outcome, right? So, and oftentimes we think our ego feels much closer to the worst outcome than it does the wildest dream coming true. So maybe you need to push yourself a little bit more in the middle of the spectrum and approach your dream like a true Capricorn, which again is realism, neutrality, being in the middle of the spectrum, instead of catastrophizing the worst case scenario or really building up the best case scenario, but there's no meat for either one of them. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, Virgo rising is next, and this Cazimi is happening in the 5th house of both our real children and our brain children, our biological children and our creative children. So for a very few Virgo risings who are like looking to conceive, this could be a really beautiful transit, that's very fertile in some way. Or maybe there's like a decision that you and your partner are making, like, okay, this year we want to, we want to like have a child or whatnot. That's for a few Virgo risings. I think the majority, who don't necessarily have fertility on their mind, they might have more of this creative force. I could see a lot of Virgo risings starting a new project. I actually just talked to a Virgo rising client who wrote a rough draft of a book. So, and she's looking to start editing that in the new year. So like here it is. Like here's where she might start editing that draft. Yeah, there could be also, I think, some energy around like renting a art studio for yourself or making space for your art or your creativity to really come through. Yeah, I think that could be um something that really comes through. I'm thinking about I'm distracted because I was just thinking about in passing, the holidays just finished up. It's like the day after Christmas. I'm filming this and talking to my family, and like someone's aunt of cousins, of brother, whatever, is a professional poker player. And I remembered thinking like, oh wow, like I would love to look at that person's natal chart. I'm sure they have a really big fifth house because a lot of the times like gambling and games have a fifth house presence, if you're into that. So it made me think about how the fifth house does have maybe a little bit of like a take a gamble kind of energy. And it helps us sometimes take a risk that we might need to make. Again, this isn't saying go become a professional poker player this year, but if there has been something you've been sitting on that you've been wanting to try out that feels a little bit more like rolling the dice, like why don't you just roll the dice, and who cares if it doesn't work out? Is it really gonna demolish your whole existence if you sign up for this pottery class and you don't like it? Like, there's something here about I'm ready to take the gamble. I think that could be really powerful for the Virgo rising. And okay, so the Virgo risings also got kind of like a Libra-esque painting. And the chapter that I flipped to is actually called Imaginative Equilibrium. Isn't that great? Imaginative equilibrium. It's your fifth house of creativity, imagination. So, and then there's a quote that says, "As the most socially involved of all signs, I don't know about that, but Libra symbolizes the need of the mature human being to take their place in the world. Libra's symbol, the scales, emphasizes the need for balance in life." Okay, so what's jumping out at me from this is that phrase, the need of the mature human being to take their place in the world. Okay, part of that is our creativity. So when we don't claim our creative powers, we become out of equilibrium with ourselves. So I think that's where this imaginative equilibrium chapter, kind of comes in. Alrighty. Libra rising. We've got this Cazimi happening in the fourth house of the home. So I could see this kind of being maybe a time where a Libra rising could be maybe coming out of a particularly challenging period with their family, or maybe there's been some kind of disconnect, or just some kind of it doesn't even have to be this huge fight where you went no contact, with the family. It could be that, but there's something about the Libra risings where, some of them, not all, but I think some of them could be feeling just more connected with the home and family in some way. This could be because there was some kind of reconnection that went positively with the parents, the siblings, the grandma, grandpa, cousins, whatever. But this could also be for some Libra risings about creating your own family. Like some Libra risings might be, getting engaged, buying a house with their partner, deciding on a city to move to with their partner. Like there's something here about family. I could also see, what? I was thinking about this in the car. I'm so glad I remembered to say it because, sometimes you get these downloads in the car and then you forget about them. But I got this download that maybe for the both Taurus and Libra risings, there could be some travel that has to do with the ancestors, specifically Libra rising, in that theme of reconnection with the family. It could be your like great grandparents were born in Scotland, and this year you might be going to uncover or take a trip to that whatever the homeland is, because it's becoming more important on your spiritual path to connect with the ancestors in some way. So I think that's really cool. And oh my God, as I say this, I flipped, here we go again with the Zoom. I flipped to the Saturn chapter. So funny because I feel like Saturn is very like grandpa, ancestral, what came before you. So yeah, this feels right. Discipline, responsibility, limitations. Yeah, so I think there could be something about even time. Kronos, Saturn, the Greek god, Kronos, he had such bad daddy issues, he ate all of his children, until Zeus broke the cycle. So this is kind of giving me cycle breaker energy to Libra risings. Like if you were to unravel your ancestry, how would you be the cycle breaker of some of those patterns? And they could even be like simple things, like maybe no one said I love you to your grandma, and then that made it hard for your grandma to tell your dad that she loved him, and then la la la. So now you're going to say I love you way more to your own kids. It could be even something like that for the Libra risings. Yes, love it. Okay. One more thing. If a loss of a grandparent or a parent happened in the past for the Libra rising, this could be new relationship with your ancestral, parent, grandparent, something like that. Okay. Scorpio rising. We've got that rebirth, Venus rebirth, Cazimi, Phoenix happening in the third house. So this is interesting. I think the third house oftentimes can be actually a lot about what I'm doing right now. Media, YouTube, writing, Substack, anything that we might be like putting out there with our voice, our communication, our storytelling skills, writing a book. There's something about, I think, the third house that challenges us when it comes to how we are communicating ourselves and what we would like to share with the world, because I think it's very natural, kind of like how the third house is sextile to the fifth house. It's like, okay, they both see each other in a way how it's natural to want to express ourselves and put something out there. So I could see some Scorpio risings just, I don't know, starting a blog, a podcast, a YouTube channel, just writing more, journaling more, using their voice, something along those lines. The third house is also about our local environment. So if a Scorpio rising happened to move to a new place or a new neighborhood, this could be about getting to know that neighborhood or that local environment on a deeper level. And even if you didn't, like, how can you make friends with your neighbors, or how can you maybe become a regular at a cafe that opened down your street that you've never been to? I could see Scorpio risings enjoying just being more connected to their local environment in some ways. So I like this for the Scorpio risings. And let's see, here we go. Okay, so we have this big picture. Let me see what this painting is called before I show it to you. Oh, funny. Okay. So, this is a painting that Pluto is seated with his prisoner queen, Persephone. Like the god of the unseen, the planet Pluto is associated with death and rebirth. Okay, this is the painting. I don't know if it's letting show. But yeah, okay, so we've got Pluto and Persephone. This makes me think that also, and I'm thinking too now, because Uranus is finishing up in the 7th house of relationships, which isn't something I was going to talk about, but it's coming to mind now. Scorpio rising, some of you with the 3rd house, the rewriting, the new narrative, the storytelling. We need a new narrative in relationships and those power dynamics that exist in relationships. No matter how you view the mythology of Persephone and Hades, which there are actually many ways to view that mythology, it is a power dynamic. And I wonder if there's something too about rewriting a power dynamic. There could be, for some of you, relationship, like romantic relationship stuff, how you may have maybe used your power inappropriately. Of course, this is subconscious, and how you want to rebalance that power going forth in your next relationships. You may have also felt taken advantage of. You know, maybe your partner also was misbalanced in their use of power. For some Scorpio risings, this could relate to a sibling versus a romantic partner, but nevertheless, this Persephone Hades thing is making me think like, okay, rebirth of the power dynamics, especially in the ways in which we communicate with other people. And I'm thinking too, Venus will actually have a conjunction with Pluto once she gets to Aquarius in a couple weeks after this. So that should be interesting. All right. We've got Sagittarius rising. So we have the Venus Cazimi in the 2nd house of finances, money, livelihood. For some Sagittarius risings, this is a new job, a new opportunity. It's maybe a new business venture, especially because Venus tends to highlight partnerships. So I could see there being like a business partner, or maybe the new job requires you to be very like right hand person to someone else. There's something here, though, about a new beginning when it comes to maybe financial independence. And I also see that across the street, Jupiter has been transiting that 8th house of debt. So it's possible that some Sagittarius risings have actually been working hard at paying off some kind of debt. And now is a time where that chapter, maybe we're still like 6 months to 6 to 8 months out from paying off that credit card or paying off your car or whatever. And at the same time, maybe there's something about the new job, the new raise, the promotion, the way you're refinancing, the investment. There's something that's helping you get to that point. So I like that vibe for the Sagittarius risings when it comes to just like new beginning with finances. And if you happen to be feeling lost with financial things, like maybe you're just feeling, broke, or like you don't know what to do, it's not hard to feel that way in this economy, in this world, the way that capitalism often makes us feel like our value is very intertwined with the income that we're making or whatever. Maybe I would spend some time with like really what you value about yourself outside of the money that you're making. Remind yourself that you are a full human being who's not defined by a number or paycheck. And I think in a weird way, that energy helps some things stabilize in some ways. And the page I flipped to is actually two images that have to do with Gemini. So this actually makes me think like for the Sagittarius risings, Gemini's your your partner in crime in a way. And both Sagittarius and Gemini, because they're mutable signs, they can have a little bit of trouble with the energy of maybe committing, making a decision, long-term energy. So I think there's something like new commitment in the second house of finances that actually helps you have more freedom in the long term, but feels like you need to commit to it now and not go back and forth. Okay, Capricorn Rising. That Venus Cazimi is in that first house of the self and identity. So this is big. I mean, I could see this coming after a big year of really like losing yourself and finding yourself again. And, maybe even just doing things a lot differently and more efficiently for yourself. And I actually know a Capricorn rising who is a practitioner, and they got really burnt out from their practitioner role, like maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, and like completely stepped away from practicing their healing modality. I'm being vague because I want to be respectful. And in this 2025, they've come back to this practitioner role and are really thriving, I think, in a new way. But it's because they know themselves, their energy a lot better. They're managing their energy better as maybe a highly sensitive person or just an energetically sensitive person. So I could see some Capricorn risings kind of having this moment, this aha moment with themselves in the ways that they've been identifying. And maybe there's a way of seeing yourself now that is actually very helpful, Because if you can say, like, I'm an energetically sensitive person, I need to nurture myself and I need to care for my body according to this newfound identity of an energetically sensitive person, that could change your whole life, because then you're not like as tired, or you have a greater capacity for healing, working towards your passions, things like that. So I think there's like a really like solidifying of something that you've known maybe about yourself for a long time, and like now it's like, yes, like I am a writer, or I am a practitioner, I am a healer, but you're managing your energy a lot differently now, which is great. And Capricorn Rising, actually you got an image of Pisces, and then also an image that reminds me of, I know it's supposed to be Pisces, but these eyeballs remind me of Saint Lucy, who, her story for me, if you know anything about Saint Lucy, she tends to be about like sacrifice, but also finding the light and not sacrificing her own path for what other people want for her. And she's really committed to her integrity of like what she believes is right for herself. So that kind of reminds me of Capricorn Rising, like right now in this moment. There's some kind of recommitment, doubling down on like what you feel is part of your heart and your integrity and your path, and not swaying from that. Okay. Aquarius Rising. This rebirth, Venus's rebirth, is happening in the 12th house of the subconscious. I mean, wouldn't it be so nice if some Aquarius Risings this week were like on a silent meditation retreat, or they like went to a spa, or they went on like a solo hiking trip, you know, like this is something that that feels to me like a new sense of connecting with the self, but it probably is happening in some sort of aloneness or ashram or meditation center or a forest. You know, there's some place of retreat that is happening, and it's making this, for whatever reason, it's reminding me, this is coming to me right now, it's reminding me of Cheryl Strayed's memoir, which I forget the title, but I'm looking it up right now. Okay, it's called Wild. So if you read Cheryl Strayed's memoir, Wild, it's about her taking this big solo hiking trip, and she hikes the Pacific Coast Trail. I think it's called, I'm pretty sure it's the Pacific Coast Trail, not the Appalachian Trail, but correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But what this book, I mean, it might be of interest to some Aquarius Risings if you haven't read it. Cheryl Strayed's a great writer, I think, and I tend to really like memoir. And this was a memoir that I really enjoyed. And she solo hikes this huge trail and learns so much about herself and her wounds, and you know, there's some kind of vibe like that that's coming in about this transit. Like, what happens when I go at it alone for a while, and what do I discover about myself, even if it's like a 2-day meditation retreat in your own attic. And it's like, okay, mommy's having some quiet time. Like, what happens in that quiet time? Like, what do you discover about yourself? And how can meaningful solitude work its way into your whole year? Honestly, I think your whole year could have some important nuggets of meaningful solitude. And as I say that, the sirens go off. Okay, so let's do Aquarius Rising. You got the sea goat. The sea goat, which is actually the symbol that's associated with Capricorn. Now it actually comes, it's funny, the sea goat comes from the mythology of Pan, who's kind of like this lascivious god who he frolics in the forest and he plays his pan flute, and he's kind of a troublemaker sometimes in Greek mythology. But I'm just thinking about, though, he literally plays his flute in the forest and he takes care of the forest creatures and the forest energy, because he is a creature of the forest. And I think even that energy of being with nature, being one with nature, is really important. And I think personally, some of my happiest, or I shouldn't even say happiest, but like the most connected, content, alive moments happen when I'm able to become one with nature. So that's my tea, Aquarius Rising. Okay. Pisces Rising, we've got this Venus Cazimi happening in the 11th house of groups and networks. I really think there's some, maybe there's a little bit of like a death and rebirth in the house of friendship. You know, it's possible for the Pisces risings that there needs to be maybe some new connections made, especially with the topic of creative projects also on the table with Jupiter in the 5th house. Like, okay, you want to have an art show gallery, but who are you connecting with? Who has a gallery? You know what I mean? Or like, are you going to the local artist meetup? If you're a musician looking for a band, did you post on MySpace? Like, are you doing your part in attracting the groups or the networks or the creative people that you need to make your project a reality? That's my first question. I think there could also be some grief with friendships, though. It could be like friend is moving away, or I'm feeling kind of lonely in this city. But in that, there might be an opening to meeting some new important people. And I would ask that to the Pisces risings, like, how long has it been since you did meet a new friend or put yourself in the position of meeting someone that could be a really fruitful connection for you? And I don't care how old you are. I truly don't. And I believe at every stage of life, it's possible to meet people and it's possible to invite new people into your life. I think the reason it seems harder as you grow up, I think there's a lot of reasons, but I think it's partially the story too. Like the story of like, oh, I'm old or whatever, how old I am, I can't make new friends. Well, Is that true, or is that just a story? And I wonder what would happen if we found a new narrative in that mantra that isn't so, that mantra, I'm too old to make friends. It doesn't sound like a very good mantra you would want to have, but I think a lot of people have that even on an unconscious level, because that's kind of what society has taught us. Yeah. So that's the T. And Pisces, you got this picture of this card that says Luna. So the moon is coming. This image of the moon is coming for Pisces. So I don't even know. Maybe go to like a new moon meetup or a full moon meetup in your area, or start one. I think that's a great place to meet people. Yeah, that's all I'm really getting from that. If you're looking if you're looking to meet some new people, go to something witchy, in your area. And yeah, I mean, look at hashtags on Instagram. You could, go to like local bookstores or local coffee shops, like check out the posters on the community boards. Like, these are places you might find local meetups that are important. All right, Aries Rising. We have this Venus Cazimi happening in the 10th house of career and expansion. I think there's something about your career that might feel like you've outgrown it just a little bit, or it's gotten really comfortable, and you might be ready for the next challenge or the next step. At the same time, I think you've worked really hard this past like 5 to even 7 years of sort of like building to get to where this is, to where you are. So it's hard to then want to rock the boat, right? And in general, Capricorn doesn't want to rock the boat. But I might actually start with connecting with a mentor or just someone you admire in your office, or maybe a friend or a connection that you have somehow that's like, okay, this is maybe what I want to get to where this person is. So beginning some kind of like mentor relationship, I think, could be really important around this time. And again, this job change doesn't happen tomorrow, but it's almost this acknowledgement that you're ready for the next step in the leveling up that begins the process in some way. And like I told my astrology students the other day, Capricorn is cardinal Earth, which for me is kind of like trying to push a car in neutral. Cardinal Earth, it's beginning in Earth. So it's beginning in the most material element. And when you begin something in Earth, much like trying to push a car in neutral, it takes a second to actually gain the momentum to actually push that car forward. Once you gain the momentum and you're pushing the car in neutral, it tends to keep its momentum, right? So that's something I'll offer you too. Maybe there's just you need to start building momentum. It's not about, again, quitting your job tomorrow, but it's about momentum. And I did actually flip to a Capricorn page. So there's another image of the sea goat in this book, and some keywords on this chapter. It's earth element, cardinal, as we discussed. Tarot card is the devil. The metal is lead. It's funny, lead is super heavy, right? So I'd also maybe consider in a cheesy way, like what things have been kind of tying you down in this current position, this current workplace, and are you as tied down as you think you are? Okay, Taurus rising. We have that Venus rebirth in the ninth house of travel, foreign relationships, cultures. It's also a house that has to do with publishing, academia. Oftentimes, when there's something like rebirth, like in the ninth house, we could see someone deciding to go back to school. So I could see that being a Taurus rising situation for some of you. It's not all of you, but it could be some of you. And again, it could just be the decision because the Cazimi is just a seed. So it might not even be, you're not really ready to apply yet. You know, you might not even know that what school you want to go to, but the decision itself is important because the universe cannot manifest the universe can't partner with us until the decision is made, right? In a lot of ways. So I could see that for the Taurus risings. For other Taurus risings, sounds interesting, but it sounds weird, but I think your relationship to travel might really be changing this year. I would say make travel a priority. Maybe there's a Taurus rising listening who's retiring this year, and you've been waiting a long time in your life to see the world. And now that you're retiring, you are ready to do it. So I would say this is an important time to really plant those seeds and buy the flight, or just make the vision board of all of the places that you want to go. I'm not a Taurus rising, but I did get a new suitcase for Christmas. And I was thinking about doing like a suitcase spell, where I put like little travel manifestations of like places I would like to go in my life. So I was going to put like Egypt and Cuba and all of these places that I've always wanted to go. And I was going to put them somehow like in a little thing in the suitcase, and like I would manifest through the suitcase. So if any Taurus risings are trying to manifest travel, hot witchy tip, you could make some kind of spell with your suitcase. But overall, I'm really excited for the Taurus risings. There could also be a Taurus rising out there who's like, publishing a book or sending something they wrote off to the publishers. Okay. We flipped to a page within the moon chapter, but there's a little snippet from an astrologer named Divine Harmony. And this astrologer says, originally, astrology was not separate from astronomy. There were the two wings of the butterfly, the left brain and the right brain, and a more symbolic way of looking at things. They were meant to help you realize your connection to the cosmos and learn about the cycles that occur both in nature and in our lives. As above, so below. The Hermetic maximum implies that what is going on in the heavens mirrors what is happening on Earth. If we understand the cycles of the planets, then we can understand how that applies to the cycles in our lives. And we start to understand that we're a bigger part of a dance. I call it the map. Your chart is the map of your soul, yet it is not a determinative map where you have no choice. Instead, we co-write with the planets. I love that. And that makes me think like whatever travel or cultural eye-opening experience, maybe you start doing a yoga class. It doesn't have to be fly across the world, but it makes me think like it's putting your life into perspective, and it's further connecting you with the cycles of your life and making you realize stuff, as Kylie Jenner once said. Okay. All right. Lastly, because we started with Cancer Rising, right? So we've got Gemini Rising. Yeah, I think that's the last one. We've got the Venus rebirthing in the 8th house of debt, shared resources. I'm like, was the 8th house? Like forgetting. 8th house is also like endings, death, inheritance. Yeah, let me tune in here for a second. Okay, so I'm thinking about karmic contracts and things that we've agreed to on a soul level, and how this Venus Cazimi could be a moment where some kind of like agreement is activating in some way. Like maybe the soul agreed, like, okay, you're going to be really career focused, but then there's going to become a point in your life where you become more spiritually awakened and you need to move away from the career focus and go a little bit more towards the spiritual path. Like there could be something like that where you feel that karmic contract triggered. There's some story with your soul that's coming up now that you feel like you need to follow. I could also see on that was a very fluffy, metaphorical explanation. On a more literal level, I could see a Gemini rising combining some kind of financial resource with a partner. Maybe you're moving in with a partner, you're getting married, you're sharing a bank account. There could be something like that coming in. You also could be paying off a literal debt, again, paying off a car or something along those lines. However, when I talk about these more literal things, they're feeling less intuitively relevant. And what feels the most intuitively right to me is this idea that the Gemini risings are, likely around this time. I think there's going to be a lot of communication from the universe. There's going to be divine omens of assurance. There is going to be ancestral support. And you also want to think about what patterns you do not want to repeat in this lifetime. So if your parent was a workaholic and there are threads of that in your own life, how would you like to transmute that pattern? Transmutation of patterns feels intuitively right to me, in a lot of ways. And let's see, Gemini rising. Oh my gosh. Okay. I think I'm right. Because the picture that you got is a cancer picture, and it's a big picture of a crab, and yeah, there's some cool crab artwork on this page. And I mean, Cancer as a sign is a lot about our ancestry, our memories, our connection, maternal bond, and also how that stuff can sometimes get messed up or trauma can happen in that area. So I think Gemini Rising with that bibliomancy. Yeah, this is an ancestral pattern. You want to be thinking about your ancestors around this time, and how you might want to be different from them, and how you might be stepping forward on a slightly different path than them. And I think it's important that you follow that, because it's possibly something that your soul agreed to do. So that's my tea, my friends. I hope the Venus Cazimi rising signs can help you guys in some way move through January 2026. I'm excited for the year ahead, and hopefully this is one of many astrology videos this year. I'm trying to be more more organized, like my business partner, with my content. So, send me good vibes for that. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe. That all helps my channel. And then if you would like to book a personalized reading with me for 2026, I do both year ahead astrology and tarot readings. So head on over to my site. All of that stuff is in the show notes. You know where to find it. And I'll see you guys next time.